Hey everyone.
Hello.
Hello, Paddy.
You were so kind to invite me on. Thank you so much. And it's wonderful to finally meet you after, talking to you for so long.
Yeah, Paddy and I, we've been talking for a while. He's very interested. He's a BBC journalist who is very interested in technology and how it's applied in Ukraine. So apologies, I'm gonna put my phone on Do Not Disturb. And so yeah, today we finally met, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to interview Paddy very quickly because I think he has a call in like 15 minutes. I thought it would be good to
I can always be late to
have
things.
you.
It's okay.
Amazing. That's great.
I usually am.
So yeah, thank you to everyone who is joining. I'm gonna put out a tweet about this space. Paddy, if you can introduce yourself and tell people a little bit more about yourself, that would be great.
Hi. Well, yeah, I guess like Alona said, my name's Paddy or Porek. I'm these days largely a tech journalist. Funnily enough, I got into that while covering Ukraine. I was in Ukraine quite a lot, covering the last days of Maidan, and then I was also in. I went to Donetsk quite a lot when, in the early days of things changing there. I wrote a little bit about that too. So, you know, this was interesting because this actually Ukraine led me to writing more about tech, because covering both Euromaidan, which was glorious and exciting, to be there and to be able to witness, and then also some people starting to leave Donetsk and moving for Kiev, and finding new lives in ways that tech was playing a role in this. It really struck me, and then I started to write more tech pieces based on what I was seeing in Ukraine, and then I've kind of kept writing tech pieces since. So it's kind of nice actually to bring them both together and be looking at Ukraine now, maybe through the lens of how things like, how Ukraine, which has always been, struck me as quite socially networked, maybe ahead of the curve, and has now maybe been into cryptocurrencies a little ahead of the curve, has been able to hop on that and use cryptocurrencies as a way of getting fast funds into the country, and then using cryptocurrencies as a way of paying for supplies, resources, things it needed from outside contractors who maybe previously had never accepted cryptocurrency, but they looked into it and it was quite easy to do, and it was going to help in this use case. It was going to let them pay for something quite vital and get the money across instantly instead of waiting for bank networks that, particularly in this context, were quite sluggish and slowed down because of the invasion. So that's been a quite interesting thing to watch. And then, of course, this leads into your own work with Ukraine DAO and looking how people have used blockchains to talk about doing reconstruction in a slightly different way, maybe a way it's more accountable, maybe a way it has less overhead costs than traditional aid bodies. And some quite interesting stuff about using blockchain to document war crimes that take place during an invasion, in a way that makes video clips credible, such that they can't be doctored. Someone who wants to deny them can't make deep fakes, and say, well, look, this is what the person actually said. I think there's some wonderful things happening here,
It's
and just
fascinating.
It is fascinating for me, and I love being able to cover it, especially because it brings me back to my own roots as a writing about technology.
I was just showing Paddy the Starling Labs data integrity framework. There is this video. I'm gonna put it up in the nest. Well, basically, quick intro. My name is Alona. I'm the co-founder of Ukraine DAO, which is a Web3 / crypto native community that supports Ukraine. And so we've used crypto to fundraise for Ukraine in the early days of the full-scale invasion. Ukraine DAO was set up by me on the 21st of February, so 3 days before Russia started this invasion. And thanks to the power of blockchain and crypto, we were able to, first of all, fundraise very quickly, and we were able to transfer the donations very quickly. And so within like the space of a few days, we were able to transfer like over $4 million to Come Back Alive, which is the biggest and the most respectable charity in Ukraine that supports the armed forces of Ukraine. And it was the largest donation, if you talk about a single transaction in the history. And it would not, sometimes people ask me like, why didn't you why didn't you go through the traditional like charity means? Why didn't you set up a traditional nonprofit? First of all, I have no idea how to do it. That's reason number one. I'm a crypto native person, and I only know how to do things with crypto. And so everyone is kind of helping Ukraine in the way they can, right? And second, Ukraine is so extremely digitally developed. There are very few countries in the world, I think, that can compete with it. And so, like charities in Ukraine, that's a really interesting thing about them that is very different from other countries. Charities in Ukraine have been accepting crypto for years. And so the first thing I said to the future co-founders, my friends Matthew and Steve, is that we can create an organization that can transfer the crypto donations to the Ukrainian charities and volunteer networks that have been they've been accepting crypto donations for a very, very long time. And so we get super lucky that in our case, the infrastructure was already in place, and that the Ukrainian government is super, super supportive of our efforts. And so we've received official support of the Ministry of Digital Transformation, and it's making our lives a lot easier that we don't have we exist in harmony with the government. And if anything, we try to help them in every way we can. We try to amplify every message they put out and so on, and try to be something that's of support to them and not something that they are fighting with and we are fighting them. It's very rare, and I really really appreciate it. But I wonder, you were at the Maidan when the Revolution of Dignity was happening?
I was. I mean, that's what I initially went over for. To cover.
When did you got there for the first time? When was your first visit?
It was funny because I was having dinner with another UK journalist, John Simpson, who's quite well known as a foreign affairs reporter, kind of the tops of the field. And I was asking him, well, what would you do today, if you were kind of starting out? And he said, well, look, I'd probably got on a flight to Kiev, and I'd start writing about Maidan, and which eventually turned into the election, which brought Poroshenko to power, and then things developed in the east from there, because I was being quite grumpy to him. I was being quite awful and saying, well, you guys, you had it so easy because you had your back up when you were starting, however many years ago, sort of cushy expense accounts, etc. Then maybe people beginning now as foreign affairs correspondents, the onus is on them maybe to show what they're able to produce. Maybe the incentive is to get themselves into other countries quickly, and even so, can you still guarantee these stories would sort of be heard, would reach an editorial readership? And he said, well, there's back on you, mate. The only thing forward is to go off and see and give it a try. So I said, well, I'll show him. I'll go, and I booked I think it's an EasyJet flight to Kiev, to Boryspil. And it just turned out they were very cheap. So I said, okay, well, there's no harm in going. And I went and stayed with some people off Airbnb who turned out were quite involved in Euromaidan and knew some of the organizers. So I was able quite quickly to spend a lot of time talking to some incredibly interesting people. There were these wonderful sides to it. There's a stage in the middle, and people were putting on theater, to contribute to the atmosphere of describing what a new Ukraine could be, what imaging a new national community could be, and maybe using the arts for that. And sides of that I would never have imagined. And there was also a very strong domestic anti-corruption argument side to it. Quite a lot of people had anti-corruption T-shirts. And there's also the sense that here's an opportunity maybe to build a new country, and discuss from the start what could a new country look like. And that was positively amazing. I mean, it was very.
Can I ask you a question?
Please go on. Yeah.
Recently I was reading this German this article in a feminist German newspaper magazine. It was absolutely horrendous, this article, and it described. I'll try to find it. It described what was happening at the time in Kiev as some sort of like. I found it. Yeah, I'll put it up in the nest. So it says, the article goes, in 2014, the United States supported an insurgency, a violent insurgency in its final phase, against the legitimately elected Ukrainian government of Viktor Yanukovych, which was pro-Russian. And so I replied to this sentence with this tweet saying that that Moran, that's how I described the author of the article, is referring to was the revolution of dignity. And it happened precisely because Ukraine is a democratic society and we have a sense of agency on a personal level and we act on it. It's something that people in Germany seem to be missing, by the way. I was a bit annoyed, as you can imagine. But to you, what did it look like? You were there as a kind of third party, right? Was it did it look to you like this is like some US paid demonstration that people came there to, because I don't know, for whatever reasons, but not for Ukraine? Like what was it like? What was the mood like in the crowd?
Well, I mean, it always struck me as a reasonably spontaneous movement that wasn't controlled. It wasn't controlled. It wasn't controlled by any political force.
It was a DAO. I just realized.
That's what a way of putting it. I mean, various politicians from within Ukraine, various aspiring politicians, people who wanted to return to power, were very much there trying then to ride the coattails, of this mass demonstration that kind of had come up from below, but it didn't belong to them, and it sort of struck it. It was quite difficult, I think, as an existing politician who had existed in the previous system, then to turn around to a new revolution from the bottom and say, well, look, I'm part of this, guys, look at me. I think something that interesting that you mentioned about maybe how some parts of the left in some European countries have felt a need to turn against something like Ukraine, it's interesting. I think you would also see it. So I'm Irish. I'm an Irish citizen, and I kind of ping between Dublin and London and other places where I'm writing about. And I guess you've also seen it with some voices within Ireland, where maybe the bulk of the country's been enormously supportive.
I have seen that.
And Ireland's visa policy towards Ukraine has been, well, you don't have one. Just please, you're welcome. Please come. And the settlement has been quite slick. When you arrive at the airport, the Gardaí will say, well, who here is from Ukraine? Okay, well, hang on, let's get everyone else through first. Then we'll say, okay, Ukrainians, you guys are very welcome. First put you through kind of processing with the Red Cross, who are right here because they play a role in international population movements during conflict. And then there's the Department for Social Protection are there to make sure everyone's got a PPS number. It's like a social security number, a national insurance number, just to be able to work, and a SIM card. And then a vet is there on call because a lot of people arrive with cats and dogs. So that quite quickly gets the veterinary bit out of the way. And it's all slick and it's very well done. And that bit actually made me extraordinarily proud of Ireland. I think one thing that has surprised me is you have had a few voices, only a few. It's reasonably marginalised, but maybe I think a couple of MEPs from Ireland, like Mick Wallace and Claire Daly, have had the view that if you want to see the world through imperialism, and imperialism is always kind of the West. It's the US and its allies. And being moral, being anti-imperialist, means being on the other side of this.
I'm
So
so happy you
therefore,
said it. It's so accurate. Yeah, this is exactly what it's like. So whenever I see the so-called feminists or the so-called LGBT activists who are supporting Russia, whereas they wouldn't survive in Russia for a day, it's because they have this strongly held view that the West equals bad, and so therefore, because there have obviously been like a lot of issues with imperialism in the West, then by their logic, um, by supporting Russia and effectively like appeasement politics, right? So it's genocide apologism in practice. That in that way they fight imperialism in the West. The thing is that they are only able to even express these views because they're in the West. You know, that's a funny. It's like a funny. Like a paradox that they don't pick up on, like in Russia, you know, in here in the UK, they can go for a demonstration and they can, you know, take a loudspeaker with them and tell, I don't know, Boris Johnson and whoever else they want that they suck and blah blah blah. They can only do that because they're in the West. If they went for an anti-war protest in Moscow with whatever symbolics or with no symbolics at all, with no posters or with some anti-war poster, they would be arrested within 5 minutes, you know. And
we've seen it happen. You know,
yeah,
quite a number of very decent decent Russians getting arrested quite quickly and being willing to undergo that. You know,
yeah, exactly. And my friends
would we
from
be so
Russia,
brave? You know, would I be so brave? I don't know.
yeah, my friends from Russia who, you know, that people accuse me of all sorts of things, including hating all Russians. But we actually, I forgot to tell you, we started a series of spaces that's called Special Russophobic Operation. And every week we have this, well, so far it's only been one friend, but I'm planning to bring other ones on as well. It's people from Russia who say the most, well, what you would call Russophobic things that you can imagine. So they join my spaces and they tell everyone what it's like in Russia, what they think of Russia as a state. And it's hilarious because it's you know, it's a Russian person saying this. And I have recently asked a friend from Russia to put together a page, an ocean page, you know, so like a database of all the things that I said about Russophobia. And it was very funny to have like a person who's in Moscow help me trash Russia online, because the good, well, the so-called, like, you know, people like to tell me there are good Russians. Good Russians are not mad at me for what I say. Good Russians hate Russia too, and everybody should hate Russia and everything that what, you know, that it's about, because it's culture, it's yeah, it's incorrigible. And so the only way to kind of help Russian people wake up to what's happening is by kind of shaking them up a bit in a figurative sense of this word, because before someone jumps in and accuses me of trying to kill all Russian babies again. But yeah, I'm very glad
You
you
know,
brought it up.
something that was quite emotional to me is that a Russian friend who I last saw when I was last doing a story in Moscow. You know, I heard from her in the early days of the invasion, saying, "Listen, I've left Russia. I don't want to go back. I don't want to pay taxes to support this. I'm now outside the country, and I don't exactly know what I'm going to do for a living. Do you have any suggestions?" And that was just I was touched. You know, what a splendidly moral thing to do, to say I refuse to exist in this country. I refuse to pay
But
taxes.
most of them, I mean, most of people who have any kind of human decency, they have left. There are people like my friends who have left to well, they have stayed to fight with the regime, and the percentage of them that's mad at me and for, you know, things that I say is pretty much zero. But it's very rare. So for example, Denise, who was in our Twitter spaces like last week and the week before that, he sent his family abroad. They've left, and he's stayed. He's planning to try and well, I guess the main reason he stayed is because he's helping people who are there kind of you know, he's still hopeful to kind of help Russians open their eyes on what's happening, but he is very pessimistic. If you listen to his Twitter spaces, or he writes after every session like a quick TLDR, like a summary of what was being discussed. Like you can, yeah, I'll send you the links. He's not exactly a ray of sunshine, but I understand why. If I had to live in Moscow, I probably would be very sad as well. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, an important question, right? You were in Ukraine for so long. How much time did you spend there?
I was kind of commuting between London and Kiev and Donetsk. At least at that time, it was quite easy to take the overnight sleeper and go Platzkart very very cheaply, Kiev to
But
Donetsk, and then wake up in the morning.
It was after the Maidan, right? It was in.
Yes, yeah. I sort of bridged. I was covering the end of Maidan, and I was there. I was actually in Donetsk. I was in Lenin Square when the separatists declared the republic, and then I wrote some stories about people like there's an art center called Izolatia, really doing really neat stuff, and they quite quickly realized their position was untenable within the DNR. That there are a few different separatists who kind of took slightly different views, but maybe the one that kind of won out was this stuff. It's not orthodox. It's not. This art is kind of it's pornographic. It's kind of very 1930s ways of describing modern art, actually, and seeing it kind of as immoral and a threat to the state.
The way I see it is like Putin said. Well, Putin thinks that Ukraine is not a real country, right? So he recently said that Ukraine was invented by Vladimir Lenin in 1922. I don't know what kind of stuff he is on to come up with a theory like that, but I feel like I need that because it's a really creative it's a creative theory that Ukraine was created in 1922. But he claims that Ukraine is not a real country, and therefore he's gonna go and come up with 10 new countries in Ukraine. That's pretty much a TLDR, or the summary of what's happening. So I first found out I learned the word separatism in like 2015 when Russia invaded. Like I grew up in Eastern Ukraine. I've never seen a separatist in there. Like it's an import product of Russia that it supplies Ukraine with. But my question, I guess, was spending so much time in Eastern Ukraine that Russia claims to be rescuing from the genocide of Russian speakers. How many Ukrainian Nazis have you seen there?
I would struggle to count one. I mean that.
So what's Russia doing there? Who is it rescuing? The Russian speakers in Eastern Ukraine from?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I actually helped a girl I know quite well, who I came to know in Donetsk, who had to flee to Kiev, and then she more recently fled to Dublin. I got a lovely note from her saying, congratulations, I've selected your beautiful country as my new beloved homeland. Can you please help me find a place to stay? And I put it up on Twitter, and sure enough, Irish people are, I think anyway, are very lovely. And someone quite quickly, more than one person actually, said, "Well, please, I've got an extra room. I understand. Our heart goes out to everyone given the situation, and anything. If I can help one person, please come live with me. I'd be honored." So she's turned up with her two cats, indeed. And I think the first thing she said when I came to see her, I brought her some sunflowers. Which I was just able to get. And she said, "Look, I had to leave Donetsk because Putin was rescuing me there, and then I had to leave Kiev because Putin wanted to go and rescue me there because I'm a Russian speaker. Will Putin just please stop rescuing me? This is becoming quite awkward.
Listen. I have this page about Azov Regiment. I'm gonna link it too, and I literally say in this page on top of it that I'm a Russian speaker from Eastern Ukraine, and that I pray every day. I'm not a religious person whatsoever. I am really hoping that my family is not rescued by Russians in Ukraine, because it's literally the worst thing that can happen. Okay, I found the page. I'm going to pin it in the nest. I invited Volodymyr, who just joined us, to speak. Paddy, Volodymyr is our friend who. Do you know John Sweeney? Have you heard of the journalist John Sweeney?
Absolutely.
He arrested him in Kiev in March this year.
Right?
Yeah. Why do you think he did it? Can you make a wild guess?
I can't quite remember. Can you tell me? Can you remind me?
So no, because I didn't tell. Of course you can't remember, because I never told you the story. That's why I'm asking. What do you think John Sweeney could be arrested for in Ukraine?
I don't know.
Yeah, I bet. So basically, John Sweeney. I invited Volodymyr to speak, but I don't know if he's able to join. He's a bit busy at in the army. But basically, what happened, right? Well, John Sweeney was in Kiev in March, and he was taking pictures of something. And so Volodymyr, being very, very vigilant, he decided that John Sweeney was a Russian spy, and therefore he needed to be arrested. So, he informed John Sweeney of that. John Sweeney unfortunately started trying to refuse to be arrested like that in the middle of Kiev for no reason.
It's exactly what a Russian spy would do, right?
Exactly.
He's got the beard.
Why would you do the same
the
thing?
beard looks quite Marxist.
Exactly. And so, yeah, Volodymyr probably thought, some weird dude with this like silly orange hat on, definitely a Russian agent. And so Volodymyr arrests him, and he takes him to the office of the security service in Ukraine. Imagine. And John Sweeney kind of doesn't, refuses to be treated like that the whole time. And yeah, anyway, they became best mates, and so
Brilliant.
now I'm trying.
It's always nice when friendships have like a good origin story, right?
Like all the best friendships start like that. So yeah, Volodymyr, if you want to tell this story yourself, you can join us. If not, if you're busy, you can just listen. But yeah, I also pinned to the NASM the video they filmed together. It's very sweet.
I think it's called a meet cute in films, isn't it?
Say again?
I think in films it's called a meet cute.
I'm not exactly, so you can educate me on this. And Volodymyr is also a filmmaker, by the way. So a lot of interesting stories he could tell us, but I think because he's not joined yet, I don't think he is around to do that. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, didn't you have a call, by the way, Paddy? You had a call like 15 minutes ago.
I'm timeliness is was it what Tolkien said about wizards, that wizards are never late or early. A wizard appears exactly when they mean to.
Well, time flies when you're having fun, right?
And I'm having very much fun with you and all of you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, thank you very much for joining me today. If nobody has any burning questions, we are going to wrap it up. But if you do have questions, Paddy is at mine today, so we can still take questions and address them in the text format. So thank you so much, Paddy, for telling us exactly how many Ukrainian Nazis you met in Eastern Ukraine. Very informative.
I mean, I'll keep my eye out. You never know. I might see the first one.
To everyone who joined, I'm gonna let Paddy go because I don't want him to be rude to his to the person that he was actually about to have a call with. And yeah, Paddy, really appreciate you coming over today and donating your time to Ukraine. It's super important that we keep the conversation going about.
Brilliant. But it is such an honor. It's such an honor to be able to join you all. So thank you so much, and I can't wait to see what exciting things you yourself are involved in going forward. It's
shortage of them.
Inspiring to follow.
No dull day at Ukraine DAO ever.
I imagine not.
Right. Thank you very much to everyone. Have a good evening.
Take care, everyone. Bye, Alona. Thank you.